Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So often on the show, our mission is to, wrestle with these huge, complex topics, sifting through just massive stacks of sources.
Yeah, we really get into the weeds.
We do. But today, we're doing something a bit different, something much more focused. We're taking just a single, razor-sharp observation.
A linguistic nugget, you could call it.
Exactly, a linguistic nugget. And we're going to use it to peel back layers of meaning, connecting culture, language,
Mm.
and really the way our memory fundamentally works.
That's a fascinating one.
It is. Our goal today is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack how these really deep, complex ideas can be, well, visually encoded.
Right into the basic structure of a language, in this case, the Chinese writing system.
And it acts as this powerful shortcut to knowledge. I mean, it's incredible because it bridges these huge cultural distances.
Hmm.
The hook here is just, it's irresistible. We've been looking at this mnemonic device that links the visual parts of one specific Chinese character
Yeah.
directly to the story of Adam and Eve.
In the Garden of Eden, yeah.
It's wild. It suggests that this, universal human story, thousands of years old, can be just condensed into two simple symbols to lock in a definition.
It really is a remarkable piece of analysis. It goes way beyond just simple etymology.
Right.
It really shows the power of what you might call a mnemonic bridge.
A mnemonic bridge. I like that.
Yeah, it takes this foundational knowledge from one culture, a Western, Middle Eastern religious myth, and uses it to anchor a learning goal in a completely different system.
The Chinese language.
The Chinese language. And the surprise of that connection, that becomes the context. And
Okay.
context, as we always say, is just the absolute key to memory.
Exactly. So to really appreciate the genius of this, we have to start with the basics. The visual code itself,
The components.
the components. If you ever studied Chinese, you know that the real learning moment happens when you stop seeing characters as just random shapes,
Mm-hmm.
and you start seeing them as these logical assemblies of parts,
Mm-hmm.
radical.
That's the breakthrough, yeah, when the logic clicks.
It's the absolute key to making vocabulary stick. So the character we're looking at today is structured with two main components right next to each other.
Side by side.
So on the left side, we have the radical for clothing,
Right. The concept of what we wear, yifu.
yifu.
Mhm.
So that's our starting point, protection, covering, maybe even civilization.
And then if you look to the right side, the component there is the radical that means fruit.
Fruit. Okay. Conceit.
So visually, you have these two very concrete ideas right next to each other, clothing and fruit.
Clothing and fruit.
But here's where the logic discrete. It falls apart if you try to take it literally.
Okay.
Because when you combine clothing plus fruit, the meaning of the whole character is naked.
Naked.
Or not wearing clothes. Meiuchanifu.
Wait. So clothing plus fruit equals not wearing clothes.
Exactly.
That's the crucial reveal, isn't it? Because that makes no common sense at all.
Mm.
If you saw those two parts on a flashcard, you would never, ever guess that definition. It's not an additive relationship. It's something else.
It's an implied relationship.
Yeah,
Or a conditional one.
right. It forces you to step back and ask a really specific question.
Mm.
Under what very specific story, what narrative do the ideas of clothing and fruit combine to create this sudden dramatic realization that you're not wearing clothes?
It begs for a story to fill in that gap.
It does.
And that search for the story, that's the whole mechanism the mnemonic is built on, which I think brings us right into our second segment.
The cultural bridge. This is where we bring in the context to make it all stick.
Exactly.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting because the story, you need to solve this visual riddle. Well, the source material provides it. And it's probably one of the most widely known origin stories in the world.
It's one that most people listening will know instantly.
For sure. The concept we're looking for, this sudden shift in awareness, this recognition of, vulnerability, of exposure, is perfectly mirrored in the story of Adam and Eve.
Yeah, Dang Yashawa.
Adam and Eve. So just think about the sequence of events in that story.
Okay.
Initially, they were without shame, right? They had no awareness that they were naked.
Right, that was their state of innocence.
And then a catalyst is introduced.
yeah.
They eat the forbidden.
The fruit of knowledge. Zijigun.
There it is, the fruit component. That's the trigger.
The trigger and the consequence of eating that fruit was immediate. It was enlightenment, right? The opening of their eyes, gaining knowledge.
And what was the very, very first piece of knowledge they gained?
That they were naked. They realized the absence of clothing.
So you've got the fruit acting as the catalyst for the change in status. And the consequence is the loss of that innocent state. which is represented by the sudden awareness of the lack of clothing.
It moves perfectly from the object, the fruit, to the reaction, which is both physical and emotional, the realization of nakedness.
And the emotional outcome, as the source notes, is so important here.
It's crucial.
After eating the fruit, they discovered they were naked, and they immediately felt shame.
Shame. That whole high-stakes story arc from pure innocence to this self-consciousness and shame is compressed into just those two visual components.
That's such a powerful connection.
Huh.
But let's bring in a critical note here, because I think this adds some real texture.
Okay.
Doesn't assuming this link require us to believe that the actual historical linguistic root of this Chinese character is tied directly to the Genesis narrative?
That's a great point.
That seems tenuous, maybe even impossible, given the history and geography.
And you're right to be skeptical of that etymological claim. From a purely linguistic history perspective, the connection is probably incidental.
Right.
The character could have evolved totally independently. However, for the learner, the historical truth doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
What matters is the mnemonic efficacy. Does it work to help you remember?
So the value isn't that it proves Adam and Eve influenced ancient Chinese script.
Not at all. The value is that it shows us a mechanism for memory. It's about leveraging a deeply embedded, high-stakes, cross-cultural story as a learning aid. It doesn't matter what the original intent was.
So the universality of the story, the loss of innocence after forbidden knowledge, that's the real anchor.
That's the anchor.
That's a really key distinction. The character doesn't have to have been created to tell the Adam and Eve story.
Yeah.
It just has to map onto that story perfectly to create an unbreakable memory link.
You're exploiting a cognitive coincidence. It's brilliant.
A learner, you listening, you already have that story of Adam and Eve locked into your long-term memory.
For most people, yeah. It's a basic part of global mythology, cultural literacy.
So by linking the abstract character clothing plus fruit to that myth, you turn what would be a really difficult random vocabulary word into an immediate engaging narrative.
Exactly. You don't have to waste any cognitive energy trying to memorize this random association. Your brain just defaults to remembering the story.
The sequence of events.
The sequence of events in a dramatic, high-stakes story. The one that connects the fruit, the lack of clothing, and that feeling of shame.
It just gives the abstract symbols a concrete, dramatic purpose.
Instantly. So
let's shift to the application for you, the listener. We spent all this time breaking down one character and its mythological coincidence. So what does this all mean for the bigger picture of learning and acquiring knowledge?
I think it means we need to look beyond just rote memorization. We need to look towards cognitive efficiency.
Okay.
We're moving from the simple question, does this story make it easier to remember? And the answer to that is obviously yes.
Clearly.
To the deeper question, why is this method so disproportionately effective compared to, say, just using a flashcard 100 times?
Right. What's the mechanism?
The answer is in how the brain prioritizes information. This mnemonic isn't just about a story. It's about emotion. Memory is intrinsically linked not just to context, but to emotional arousal. The consequence of what Adam and Eve did was profound, right? Expulsion, suffering, and above all, shame.
That intense emotional consequence tied to the word nakedness.
It creates a neurochemical anchor that's just far stronger than any simple logical association could ever be.
That's fascinating. So it's not just clothing plus fruit and naked, it's clothing plus fruit, shameful nakedness.
Exactly. You're accessing a primal, universally understood emotional response.
When you're learning any dense subject language, law, technical procedures, whatever, you're trying to minimize your cognitive load. That feeling of just being overloaded with information, this character is an absolute masterclass in how to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the difference between this method and a typical modern mnemonic, like an acronym.
Okay.
An acronym or a little rhyme. It's purely superficial. It helps you retrieve information, sure, but it gives you zero context, and it's so easy to forget once the test is over.
Yeah, that's true.
But this method, this taps into deep cultural schema. You're connecting new abstract data, the visual radicals, to these incredibly durable, pre-existing memory structures.
A universal myth.
The myth of transgression and consequence. It's not a surface-level trick. It's a deep embedding. It's the difference between taping a reminder note to your door and carving the message into stone.
That's a great way to put it. You're essentially leveraging what you already know in the most efficient way possible.
You don't have to build a new memory palace from scratch.
You're just using a foundational wing that's been standing for millennia. So, if we look at this as a model, this character is a powerful example of layered knowledge acquisition.
It is. The learner is mastering 3 distinct levels at the same time, which just drastically speeds up the whole process.
So what are the layers?
Okay, first, you mastered the structural knowledge.
Mhm.
You understand what clothing and fruit look like as separate visual units.
Got it, the basics.
Second, you embed the narrative knowledge. You apply the high-stakes story of Adam and Eve, which gives you the if-then logic.
The story that connects the parts.
And third, you achieve the linguistic outcome, the permanent lock-in of the character's core meaning, which is defined by that feeling of shame and vulnerability.
That methodology seems golden for anyone facing a big learning task.
It is.
The advice seems to be, don't just look for the simplest logical link. Look for the inherent drama.
Yes. Look for the stories that connect your new information to narratives you already have.
If you can attach a piece of abstract data to a feeling, to shame, to triumph, to fear, you make that memory exponentially more durable.
That's the takeaway.
It really is an unexpected cross-cultural synergy. We took a simple visual equation, clothing plus fruit, and found this incredible universal story that it locks the meaning into your memory.
It confirms that the human mind thrives on narrative, even when it's just processing abstract symbols.
So, as a final thought for you to carry forward, if this deep, structurally perfect mnemonic, leveraging a story from Genesis to define a key Chinese concept, if that exists in just a single character, how many other cultural or historical narratives are subtly encoded in the language, the symbols, the systems you use every single day?
That's the question. The key to quick, thorough knowledge might be less about brute force absorption
Right.
and more about realizing what powerful, emotionally charged narrative anchors you already have just sitting there waiting to be mapped to new information.
Look for the drama hiding behind the definition.
Exactly.
That is a phenomenal challenge to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly unified world of clothing, fruit, knowledge, and shame. We'll see you next time.